In this short episode, we are going to discuss what happens when the federal government becomes your largest customer. If you're interested in learning more, continue listening. Welcome to the Red to Black podcast with your hosts Warner and Mario, and today we are discussing what do you do when the federal government becomes your largest customer. Mario, what are your thoughts?
Well, ideally you pivot. Unfortunately, like when there's price controls on farmers because the government's their largest customer, you can't really pivot, so you just stop growing food and you have a famine.
Going a little bit deeper into that, why do we choose this topic? Well, think about what just happened, the pandemic, when they shut down a large portion of the country. Like in Los Angeles, they shut down a lot of stores. Most of those stores have not come back. Well, not necessarily most of those stores, but I would say driving around, let's say anywhere from 20 to 40%, depending on the area you're in. And then the businesses that are still up and running, like say multifamily real estate or other businesses, they are getting money, assistance from the federal government to cover their gaps. Also, the individuals that are being paid not to work, that are sitting at home, guess where they're getting their money? They're not getting it from the free market, from their labor producing energy to contribute to goods and services. They're getting it from the government. Also, when you look at multifamily, there's apartments all over the country that have been smoke checked by this pandemic and this shutdown, and now they're getting rental relief from the government. So as an apartment owner, it's very important for you to look at, if you are one, who is your customer? Because if let's say 40 to 50% of your apartment income is coming from rental assistance from the government, you no longer have customers in the private market. Now, why is that an issue? Well, governments are notorious for running out of money. So if you're at 40, 50% and your rental assistance is coming from the government, well, what happens when the government is no longer paying the bill? That your customer and your building goes out of business because you cannot afford to pay the mortgage payment. Mario, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, two thoughts on that, Warner. Is number one, the government doesn't run out of money. What happens is the money becomes worthless. So the money just becomes, the purchasing power of the money becomes less and less. So you'll get paid with fake dollars that are worth less and less and less with real purchasing power. Number two is because the government is your largest customer and you're not dealing with you're not serving the person that's living in that rental unit. Using multifamily real estate as an example, because you're not serving that customer, there's a disincentive for you to actually provide a clean place, a place that's well painted, a place the parking lot's well taken care of, landscaping, maintenance. The building deteriorates because there's this ubiquitous, government agency that's providing you fake dollars that you don't actually interact with on a daily basis or a weekly basis or even a monthly basis. You're just getting these fake dollars injected into your business. You have no incentive to keep the customer, the actual person living in that apartment, happy, so it deteriorates.
Yeah, so those are phenomenal points because what you're pointing to is the free market mechanism is the exchange of value through goods and services, right? You produce a good and service, which is an apartment, and then you have all these individuals that are living in your apartment, yet they're not paying you. It's the government. So you're kind of going, there's kind of, I would guess, bad blood with the property owners and the property managers, because now it's like, well, I'm not dealing directly with you. You probably shouldn't even really be staying here because you're not paying for this and you're getting this free payment. You don't have any skin in the game. So unless you're a really upstanding individual, are you taking care of that place? And it creates this downhill cascading set of events. Also, when you went into an agreement, because Mario and I talk about this a lot, we're big on agreements. Everything is agreement. When you go into an agreement, and I'm talking to possible listeners that could be property owners or actually individuals leasing or renting that apartment, you went into an agreement. So when you can no longer pay, that transaction is now transferred over to the government, and it becomes a real pain in the butt for a lot of these property owners who have not been paid, because they have to go through this process sometimes of going through the tenant to get them to apply for it to get paid, or they have to go to the state. And what used to be a simple agreement and transaction, like, hey, what's your checking account or what's your online bill pay? And it's seamless and it's quick. Now you're dealing with an entity what I said about not having the money. Yeah, they can always get the money because they can print more. What I meant was, for further clarification, is that the money may not get to that government in a timely manner, or the government may not disperse it because of fraudulent behavior somewhere else or inefficiencies in government. What I'm saying is, why I keep going on and on about this, it just becomes this whole inefficient process, as I just described, when it used to be just a simple payment between a landlord and a tenant. Now it's this just crazy mess that you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely, Warner. You're going to see less and less people wanting to do business in that space because the returns will be deteriorating. So you'll get lower and lower returns. Less and less people will be wanting to offer government housing. Basically, it turns into a diminishing returns.
Yeah, and here's why it turns into diminishing returns. When you have individuals exchanging value, let's just give you another example of the apartment complex, and you're the owner or landlord of this apartment complex, and you're exchanging value for their money, right? You provide them a room, they provide you money. Well, when you own one of these apartments, which I have with my wife, we would always talk to the individual and say, hey, what's going wrong? Or they let us know what's going wrong. But now when you have this disassociation where they're no longer paying, no skin in the game, there's not this efficient market mechanism of communication where they're telling you what's going wrong. Now there's this barrier because you're thinking, well, they're not paying. What are they doing to my apartment? I don't know if I can get them out. What if the government? It just creates this whole disincentive. It creates inefficiencies in the system, what you're talking about, Mario, and smart entrepreneurs are going to take a look at it and go, I don't want to deal with that. All I want to do is buy an apartment, do my unit turns, my renovations, and then market it and go into agreement with a tenant who's going to pay me every month. It's simple. It's one of the most simple business models I've ever seen. And now with this regulation and pandemics and shutdown, they're making it complex. And why do I talk about this? Because our goal for our listeners is for you to have financial freedom. And we want you to do that in a manner where you don't have a headache. We want you to do it in an environment where you can execute agreements with your customer, and those customers can actually fulfill on those agreements.